Welcome, everyone, to the Minnesota Transformation Initiative's quarterly provider training series. The topic for today is increasing confidence in conversations about work and benefits. Before we jump into the content here, a little bit about the Minnesota Transformation Initiative, or MTI. MTI is a project funded by the Minnesota Department of Human Services to build capacity to support competitive integrated employment and also community life engagement across the state of Minnesota. MTI does a number of things. We work a lot with providers who want to transform their service models, want to expand their capacity for competitive integrated employment. We do some work with counties across the state that want to improve their employment outcomes, as well as some other activities, all toward that goal of better employment outcomes in Minnesota. The objectives for today are to clarify the role of employment services staff in discussing work and benefits with people with disabilities and their families. We'll be addressing concerns employment services staff may have about bringing up work and benefits with people with disabilities, and also provide some examples and resources to support conversations about work and benefits. I want to just take a moment to talk about how that today's topic about having conversations about work and benefits fits into the 10 essential elements framework for provider transformation. Those who have worked with MTI before, any of those providers, know that we use this framework called the 10 essential elements. And these are what guide provider transformation, all of the different components that you have to be thinking about if you're trying to make some big shift within your organization. And this one really fits under customer focus and engagement, which is, you can see it highlighted there on the right in that big bucket of employment practices and community life engagement. And that's because that customer focus, the people that you are supporting, people with disabilities, this is something that we know weighs heavily on them and their families. How are benefits going to impact my work? And it's something that prevents a lot of people from even considering to pursue employment. So addressing work and benefits within your organization as part of the work you do in providing employment services and maybe day services too, is really important to meeting people where they're at and addressing their concerns. We have three fantastic presenters today. Beth Gruby is here. She's the Benefits Planning Coordinator for the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Lisa Carlson, who is an employment consultant with RISE, and Jim Freeman, who's the Chief Business Development Officer at TSC. So they'll all be taking different parts of the presentation, and we're going to start off with I'm going to turn it over to Beth from DHS to start us off.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Danielle. As Danielle said, I am the benefits planning coordinator at DHS. I have worked there for a lot of years and started doing work with work and benefits when MAEPD, Medical Assistance for Employed Persons with Disabilities, came about. Actually, before that, I was originally a trainer with MMIS too, when that switched systems for day training and habilitation providers. So I've been working in the field a long time and trying to help people understand work and benefits. So if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. There we go. Thanks. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page and just let you know what to expect from what we are talking about here today. So we hope that your understanding of the roles within discussing work and benefits is increased, that you know what kind of information and resources and training are out there for you, for staff, for the people you support, because we have a lot of it. We've developed a lot over the years. We want you to hopefully have positive messages about work and benefits. That is the number one thing that I hope you leave with today. I'll give you some 5 key messages to walk away with, and that you're just more confident in addressing those concerns that people bring up when it comes to work and benefits. Go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So we have done a lot of engagement with people in the community, people with disabilities, with families, especially as you can see on the bottom of this slide, the task force on eliminating some minimum wage. We did a lot of outreach with families, with people with disabilities, and we consistently hear the same thing. So as I said, I've been doing this benefits planning in particular for over 20 years, over 25 years now. And I am hearing the same thing today that I heard 25 years ago. And that really just brought it to the forefront again that a lot of people still say they believe their benefits change or would end. Many people think their benefits will end if they go to work or if their income goes up. A lot of people still don't know that work incentives or those program policies that allow people to work and keep their benefits or get their benefits back quickly if they lose them because of work. They don't know that they exist. We heard also that a lot of people think that if they switch from sub-minimum wage to minimum wage or higher, and they went into competitive employment, that they would have to work few hours in order to keep their benefits. So those are some common concerns. Then the next slide lists some more. We also heard about the professionals who support people with disabilities. People with disabilities said they want better supports to help understand their benefits and how work would impact them. They want more professionals to be able to be aware of ways that people can keep working and keep their benefits or manage those benefits that they need. And then we also heard that people with disabilities generally don't rely on their case managers or service providers for answers about work and benefits because they feel like they know a lot of times know more for themselves, or they're able to get the information, or they just don't get it. So next slide, please. Thanks. And so really what that led us to again, and what our message really is, and what we hope that everyone understands, and you're all working in it, so you all know that benefits aren't a separate conversation. They're not separate from employment. They're simply part of the employment conversation. So if you're talking to people with disabilities who have benefits and you're talking about work, benefit questions are going to come up. So if you want to go to the next slide. So in order to keep people engaged in the employment conversation, how do we make sure that everybody has the right information and has the information that they need to keep that conversation going? So really what we're talking about now is what are some outcomes that we can work toward as an agency, as a whole system, as an employment system. So a couple of things that we have really started honing in on is embedding benefits planning, conversations about benefits into the agency culture. So making it so that anyone in the organization who works with people with disabilities has the right information and the level of information that they need to be able to support people. So that sentence there, the ability to have conversations about benefits is really just embedded in your agency's culture and the services that you provide. And then how do we increase staff capacity? So that's really what this is about as well, is just increasing confidence, because I'm a certified work and benefits planner, and have been for a long time. And it's still consistently, people have questions, they come to me, which is great. And I try to always educate them so that the next time they get the question, they'll have their own answer. So how do we make sure that really staff have that understanding of work and benefits, that they can improve their knowledge, that all staff who are interacting with people with disabilities feel more comfortable about talking about work and benefits, or if they have questions that are beyond what they know where to go to get more help. Next slide, please. Also, communication, making sure that staff are providing accurate and effective messaging, so that when somebody says, oh, I can't go to work because I'm on SSI, they have the right messaging to be able to say, actually, and then and have some of the key messages, and know where to go, again, to point people or to get the answers for themselves. Making sure staff know what information and resources and training are out there. I'll go through some slides that will show you some of that. And then ultimately, it's so that the people that we all support can move forward. They can understand their benefits more clearly, and they understand what happens to their benefits as they transition to what's next, whatever that is, whether it's housing changes, whether it's work changes, changes in healthcare, things like that. Next slide, please. All right, so this is just a quick transition slide with a visual in this slide. And Danielle, I don't remember if the slide deck will be going out or be published. Yeah, it'll be published.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, the recording will be published and the slides will go to Evernews Registered.
Great, thank you. So there's a link in this slide to the page on the disabilityhubmm.org website that links to all the roles and responsibilities. So as you can see, the person's in the middle, and the person has a lot of people who can support them. Anybody who is getting employment services through a waiver has access to most of these people, and within your organization, if you're an employment service provider, the staff, this is really talking about the staff that you have and determining what kind of training that they might need. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. All right, so a question I get a lot is, well, whose responsibility is it to talk about benefits, right? I'm having an employment conversation. Who's going to talk about benefits? Well, we all need to be able to talk about benefits. Everybody who's working with anybody with a disability, when you're talking about work, you have to have at least a base level of understanding. And we all play that role in helping people to understand how their work and benefits can go together. So everyone supporting a person with a disability has a role in making that and helping the person make that informed choice. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we kind of broke it down into roles and how do we think about having those conversations about benefits. So everyone, whether it's bus drivers, whether it's front desk people, whether it's the CEO, whoever it is, everybody needs to know the basics about benefits and be able to give those positive messages about work and benefits. And because that is a big part of the problem that we hear, and it's so pervasive in our society as a whole, that if you are on benefits, you can't work. A lot of people who are on Social Security or SSI benefits had to prove that they couldn't work in order to get those benefits. So it's an uphill battle to change that thought process, to say, actually, you can. So we need to get that permeated, that messaging that work is possible, really permeated through all society. So everyone in your organization should be able to have those basic positive messages and answer basic questions. Next slide, please. All right. These are those 5 key messages. And like I said before, if you walk away from here with nothing but this information, well, I hope you get more than this. But if you get nothing else, these are the 5 key messages we want everybody to have and to share. So first off, work and benefits can go together. You don't have to choose between one or the other. Needed benefits in Minnesota, number 2, all public benefits in Minnesota now support work. We worked really, really hard to get work incentives included in every single benefit. So from SSI and SSDI and the federal level to general assistance on the Minnesota level. You know, GA is the kind of the lowest of the low benefits, and it has a work incentive where people are better off when they go to work. So all public benefits in Minnesota now support work. Number 3, people who work earn more money than those who don't. That's pretty obvious, right? Even if their benefits change. And that's the part that throws people. So making sure you're able to say people who work earn more money than those who don't, even if your benefits change, is really important. Number 4, benefits should not be the reason someone chooses not to work. There might be a lot of other reasons, but it breaks my heart when I hear somebody isn't working because they're afraid of what will happen to their medical assistants or to their SSI. That should never be the only reason a person chooses not to work. And we can help them plan and figure out how to be able to work. Number 5, benefits planning helps people see how work is possible, work to their full potential, save money, and get ahead financially. So what that really is saying, people don't need formal benefits analysis. Most people that we find do not even need formal benefits planning. They just need some questions answered. They need some accurate information. And so helping people really plan and think through things helps them move forward. So those are the 5 key things. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Daniel. Thank you. All right. So keeping in mind, always the person is at the center, right? They're the decision maker. They're the ones who get to say what they want to do. They also are the ones who need to get the information and support to learn about their benefits. They need to be able to explore and see what will happen to their benefits if they go to work. And they can plan to get to financial stability. Nobody wants to go. I wouldn't want to go to work and lose money, right? That's pointless. So helping people understand how to make a plan to get ahead financially, and then of course they can ask other people. So it's not all on them to figure out. We want them to have a team of people who can help them make an informed choice. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. We also have created, you can see on the slide, a link to the agency strategies page in the disabilityhubmn.org website. And that really can help you, lead you through all these things that I'm talking about. So I know I'm giving a lot of information. You can go into this agency strategies page and get it's a list of basically everything that I'm saying. Excuse me. And I don't know if somebody is able to throw that link in the chat right now. No, okay. If it'll be on the slides. Supervisors and managers also play a role. So a lot of times we talk about the staff and who's going to talk about work and benefits. Well, in order to get it at the agency level and have that expectation, supervisors and managers really need to be engaged. So if you're a supervisor and a manager, having that responsibility of going in and learning the information for yourself, having those key messages for yourself, building those skills and that knowledge to be able to combat some of the misinformation that's out there is really important, and helping your staff to get the knowledge and skills to have those conversations that are effective, and helping people move forward. Next slide, please. Thank you for putting that in the chat. So all staff, the rest of everybody else, needs to know and understand and be able to talk about those 5 key messages I talked about, giving those positive messages about work and benefits, not being, Pollyannish or anything, but just being real. When people, like I said, when people say I can't go to work because I'm on MA, they know how to be able to say, let's check into that and let's figure out if that's true. And I've heard differently. And then all staff need to be able to answer those basic questions, know where to get help and support with when the person needs more help. And again, in the agency strategies page, there are links to trainings that are available for staff to be able to get that base level of information. We have online e-learnings that are available. Next slide, please. All right, so for staff then who actually support people in making informed choices about work. So people like job coaches, case managers, we've said some work experience coordinators at schools, anybody who is working with the person specifically on making an informed choice about work needs a deeper level of information. Thanks, Bob. We'll get you the link. The link, like I said, it's in the PowerPoint, so the link will be available. So helping the person learn the facts about their benefits, explore their options, making that informed choice, and implementing their plan to make sure they get ahead when they go to work. So it doesn't mean that they need to be experts. We do have, the Minnesota Work Incentives Connection is a great place that they have a ton of experts who can really help and dig into benefits. Other places have really certified benefit CWICs, certified work incentive counselors that can really help. But like I said before, most people don't need that level of assistance. They just need some basic answers to questions, and they need things like an estimator session to show them, oh, here's what your benefits look like. Here, let's see what it looks like if you go to work working 20 hours a week at $18 an hour. And anybody who is helping a person make that informed choice about work can be able to help them go through those sort of tools and planning process. All right, next slide, please. Okay, we're going to turn it over back to you, Danielle, and I'll jump back in later.
Great, thanks, Beth. All right, I have a couple of questions to ask everyone who's here so we can get a sense of who's here and how you feel about some of this. So if you're multitasking and checking email or something, come back for a moment. I'm going to pop up a couple of questions. So the first question that I have for you to fill out is, what is your role? So take a minute to answer that, and we'll see who we've got here. So we've got a lot of case managers here, which is great. So even though a lot of this is geared toward employment services staff, all of this information is super relevant for case managers as well. Those key messages that Beth was talking about, and how to have some of these conversations because it comes up with the people you support. So that's great. We have a number of people here who support people to find and keep jobs or supervise them who do, managers of employment day services, other disability services professionals, and some others. So fantastic. You're all in the right place. This info is relevant to all of you. Okay, next question is, in your role, do you have conversations with people with disabilities and their families about work and benefits? Almost half sometimes, about a third, a little more than a third say all the time, and then 16% of you rarely or never have these conversations. All right, and the final poll question I have is about how confident you feel with these. All right. So 57% a little confident, 31% not confident. Only 10% said they are very confident. And I deeply, deeply respect the 1% who very honestly said, I am terrified to talk about work and benefits. I think that was me for most of my advocacy career. So shout out to the people who answered that. So yay, again, this is the right group to be in this training, which we are talking about trying to increase confidence. So phenomenal. Okay, so that is all of my poll questions, but I do have one more question that I want people to answer in the chat. The chat should be open to everyone. So I would love for people to drop in the chat what fears, concerns, or hangups you have about talking about work and benefits, especially for those people who are a little confident, not very confident, terrified of this. What is it? Like, what is it that makes you nervous about it? And take a little bit of time to drop that in. I'm actually going to continue moving on to have Lisa present, but we're going to come back to some of the things that people put in the chat and address those with Lisa and Jim at the end and give them an opportunity to respond to some of that. So please put in the chat what fears, concerns, or hangups you have about talking about work and benefits. But I'm going to turn it over for while you all are working on that to Lisa Carlson, who is an employment consultant at Rise. I am thrilled to have Lisa here. She is a certified benefits coach, does a lot of work especially through informed choice processes, helping people decide if they want to work, providing them some counseling around benefits. While she is a certified benefits coach, I do want to emphasize that you do not need to be a certified benefits coach to talk to people, have conversations about work and benefits, as Beth said, and we'll talk a little more about that later. But she is a seasoned pro at these conversations, has a lot of experience and a lot of great tips and whatnot. So we're shifting a little bit now in this training from Beth, who gave that policy overview, like here's how we want things to be done, here's how things should be done, to like, what does this look like on the ground? And that's what Lisa and then Jim will share is in their practice in supporting people to consider and find and keep jobs. How do they have these conversations with people with disabilities and their families? So Lisa, I'm gonna stop sharing my slides because I know that Lisa has a document to share and talk about. But Lisa, feel free to introduce yourself a little bit more and go for it.
I'm Lisa from Rise. I within the last couple of years went through it, and I'm a community partner work incentive coordinator. A grueling course, but I learned a lot, and I was able to help a lot of people served understand that they can work and keep their benefits or work off their benefits and be more financially stable. So kind of when I go through and speak with my individuals is first I ask them, what benefits are you on? A lot of the people I serve just say, well, I get a check on the 3rd, I get a check on the 1st. That's to track for their wages. It's really important to know whether they're getting SSI, SSDI, food stamps, because all that stuff can be affected in some way by employment, usually to the better. If the person is unsure, then I do Blue through DHS, and that gives me what all their current earnings and stuff are. Then I do the BBQI, which is a benefit planning query, and then that gives me if they've used any of their trial work periods. So then they also have that information in black and white in front of them to help them make the informed choices of how they want to go along. For when they are planning on working, I'll also do an SSI calculation sheet if they're on SSI, so we can see where their SSI benefits will go. Because for every $2 they make, their SSI is reduced by $1. And I want them to be aware of that. There's also the SGA, substantial gain income, that changes every year, that people that are in SSDI, they can make for 2025, 1,620 before their benefits are affected. That's, oh, excuse me. That's if you're on SSDI benefits. And for a blind individual, it's 2,700. So, I mean, there's a nice cushion there for people that can still work and figure out that, oh, maybe I can work more hours now because I'm getting more money. So a little tip that I had learned was to figure out how somebody can make and what they can make in a month as you go their wages by their hours worked times 4.34, and that'll give you an estimate of what they can make in a month. So if somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to be making 17 hours or $17 an hour, you can figure out how many hours they make before it's going to really impact their benefits. And I tell especially new people that are just coming into the work field that, let's give it, I always say the 30-day honeymoon period. Let's go less hours in the beginning. And then as you get comfortable and see how your wages are doing, we can always move up. I'd hate to have somebody dive right into full time, lose some of their benefits for whatever reason, and then figure out with their mental health, they weren't able to maintain employment. So I run these reports on everybody that I work with, and I also develop a vault on the DB 101, and I show them the different resources they can go to. DB 101 is a huge support for people just to go on and look at different things and can read it in black and white, and it's a resource that they can always go back to at any time to, oh, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. At any time for different resources. They can send their paychecks in that way. They can get their Social Security benefit letters. There's just it's a huge resource that I really try to get my individuals to sign up for and look into. So I don't okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. Did I stop? I had stuff for DB 101, but Beth, you did an amazing job with that. I'm not even going to go into it. But so that's kind of how I talk with my individuals about benefits. And I have a lot that the same way. They're like, well, I don't want to lose my benefits. And you can work. I have 2 boys with disabilities, and they both work part-time, and yep, they've lost a little bit of the benefits, but in the long run, they are financially better off. And their mental health is better, their wellness is better, they're part of a community. So all in all, it's better I think, for them to work than just stay home and rely just on Social Security.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm wondering too if you can share a little bit about working with family members too. I know you do a lot of that, and when family members have a lot of fear and concern, what kind of messaging you give to them, and how do you navigate those conversations?
Well, I try to give them as much information as I can in black and white. I'll bring forms. I'll do the benefit lookup. I'll do the benefit query. And that, and those 2 forms alone shows them a lot of what their adult child is earning. Because a lot of times people don't know, and, they never know if they've changed from regular MA to MAEPD, because sometimes there's that break in Social Security where some of that information doesn't come, or they'll get these letters and they're like, I don't understand what this means. I make the parents and the person served a Social Security folder when I start working with them, and tell them, when you get the Social Security paperwork, put it in there, bring it to our meetings, call me. Because if I can look at the letter, sometimes I can help them going, this is just a generated letter, or this is, this is what they're talking about in the letter. And it takes a while. I wish I could say that just by giving them those forms, they're on board. No, because it's taken them a lot to get that safety net of Social Security. It's scary. They don't want to lose it. And their fear too is it's so hard to get back. And yes, it can be. Not saying it can't be. A lot of them worry about overpay. What if they go overpay? Well, then I have the SSI and the SSDI calendars that I also give them for tracking the days of the week and the hours, and how twice a year there's an extra paycheck in there for SSI. That time maybe have them take a week off, have them, use their vacation time. And sometimes it takes months, sometimes they're gung-ho because they have that black and white in front of them. And DB 101 can verify a lot of the stuff that that I'm saying too. So I never want anybody just to take my word on it without giving them other resources to go on to.
Lisa, I have a follow-up question for you, but first, we were able to see the document as you were sharing it. Would you
okay.
be able to send it to me, and I will send it out to
Yes.
everyone when I send out the session materials?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I know everyone, we weren't able to see the document as Lisa was sharing it. I will send it out in a follow-up email to everyone who's registered for the training. Okay. So my follow-up question for you, Lisa, is that like you said that your response to kind of addressing these fears and concerns of the people you support and their families is by providing information, making sure it's, black and white. Also, I'm just, as I'm reading the stuff in the chat here, the fears and concerns that the people attending have, a piece of it is just that feeling of overwhelm and how much information there is and how complex it feels. So how do you balance that? How do you balance making sure people get all the information they need and also not overwhelming them with information and complex stuff about benefits?
That can be tricky. That's why I start with just doing the benefit lookup and the benefit query first, because that can open up a lot of questions for them. Because some people don't know what the trial work periods are. So then that can open. So we usually start with those forms. And sometimes that's all they need is just showing them that, yep, these are what they're on, and then maybe pulling in the calculation sheet. But sometimes just showing them those is enough. That kind of puts their fears down. I just kind of let them kind of guide that to where they want to go if they have any questions. I always tell them, give me a call back if you have any questions. To me, no question is silly. I've been through it with my kids so yeah, it's just following their lead and giving them the information that they want or need.
Thanks, Lisa. And someone put in the chat, could you put a link to the documents? You put in your SSI folder. This could be great to make for the people we support. So that's maybe a bigger question. If there's any kind of documents or tools outside of DB 101 that you use that we could share with those attending, if you'd be able to send, would you be willing to
send I'll send the calculation sheets and stuff and then usually that's just like the calendars and stuff. I'll send them all to you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I see a question too. Lisa, this might also be for Beth. Is there a guide for the benefit lookup, like a video or article for new staff?
There, I believe. Go ahead, Beth.
Sorry, I just put it in the chat. So there is information it's in my vault. So a lot of the questions I see, a lot of people being afraid to give wrong information. That is a huge concern. And then not knowing a lot of things. So like Lisa was saying, DB 101, nearly everything you would want to know about work and benefits is in DB 101. You can do try-it tools and estimators. Somebody was asking, what is that number you were talking about multiplying the 4.3? There's a try-it tool in DB 101. I put a link in there too that will go, you can put the number in. So if, somebody's on SSI and wants to work 10 hours a week, it $14 an hour, you can put that information in there and it will spit that back out to you. So, so you don't have to do it yourself. So I put all those links in the chat.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, I would suggest DB 101 is amazing. And like all the stuff that I'm sharing is also in DB 101 plus deeper. You can go into rabbit holes because there's so much information on there, but it's all good information. They have a design, like if you just want to know about, the work programs, it'll send you through that. It'll have the SSI calculation sheets in there. There's so much in there. For me, it's a wonderful resource to give people.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Before I turn it over to Jim, there's a lot going on in the chat at different times. If you have a question that you want to make sure we kind of loop back in and respond to, there's also, in addition to the chat, there's a function in the Zoom toolbar called Q&A. So if you drop questions you want answered in that Q&A, we'll make sure at the end to go back and respond to those. So I am next then going to turn it over to Jim Freeman from TSE. So Jim heads up a really strong employment team at TSE that does a lot of work with people being referred, supporting them to find employment, but they've also done a lot of work in the last few years supporting people that TSE provided employment and day services to in-center to move into competitive integrated employment. So they've done a lot of these informed choice conversations and a lot of conversations about work and benefits. And while Jim's the director of that team, he also has these conversations with families and with people with disabilities when they're referred in. So he is not a certified benefits coach, which I am thrilled about because he'll provide a great example of how you don't have to know all of the details that Lisa does to still have these conversations with people with disabilities and their families. So Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Danielle. So I'm Jim Freeman. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer at TSE. I kind of just oversee our employment team. But a little bit about TSE, we've been around for like 64 years, but I would say several decades ago, employment became a pretty good focus. And I would say right now, employment is kind of our biggest focus at TSE. And it's interesting to hear what Beth has to say and what Lisa has to say, because there was a time maybe 5 years ago where we were like, oh, you have benefits questions, go on DB 101, or we would say, go see the guys at Goodwill Easter Seal, and they'll figure out all your benefits for you and come back and tell us what they said, and we're going to focus on getting you a job. And there was a time, maybe about 4 years ago, that we were having a really good conversation with Danielle and Stacy Jones and Don Lavin about benefits and about how important they were, and it was fairly eye-opening to us that we were just barely scratching the surface and kind of passing the buck when it came to benefits. And so internally, we had everybody on our employment team go through the level 1 and level 2 training on the Disability Hub. And also there's some training in Relias that we had our staff go through. And then we had one of our staff, Jessica, who I believe is on here somewhere. She became a full benefits planning coach. And so we kind of really took a different look at employment and benefits, and it really helped us talk to families and the people we support about how everything can kind of work together. Danielle had mentioned that we do get a lot of referrals for people with disabilities that they want help finding a job, or maybe a little bit of help on a job, and they've had jobs kind of for the better part of their life, and they've got a good understanding of how their benefits work. But we always always do a meet and greet before we do an intake. We make sure we bring benefits into the conversation just to kind of see where their comfort level is. If they're pretty comfortable, if they can kind of tell us a lot of things that Lisa and Beth have been telling us, then we're pretty comfortable knowing that they have a good understanding. And if they're hesitant, or if they have questions, or they're kind of like, I don't know, then we will just create a conversation about kind of how things work together. If they bring up kind of those statements about, if I get a job, I'm going to lose my benefits, then we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into kind of how the process works. But we want to ease their mind if they have questions or doubts or concerns. And if they have a good feeling about it, if they're just wanting to move forward, we don't want to necessarily kind of scare them with a ton of information about these are all the dangers that you need to face. All of our job coaches are trained to make sure that the employers are trained on how benefits work with folks that are on different services, SSI, SSDI. So the employers are aware of what someone can be making and as it equates to how many hours they can work. So all of our job coaches are very aware, and they help those employers be very aware of how many hours somebody can work. And I'm sure many people on here know that, you know, a lot of the folks that we support end up being really good workers, and their employers want them to work more. Maybe they work 3 days a week and they're like, hey, can you come in a 4th day? Can you come in a 5th day? And so we want that employer to know, even if they can and they want to, that there is this extra step that we need to be aware of their benefits and how that might affect their benefits. And if it becomes something that the person that we're supporting wants to do, if they keep going, I want to work more, then we'll kind of bring things back into the fold, and we'll get our benefits coach involved with kind of how to move forward before you get into hot water. Because we don't want to limit what somebody can do if they want to move forward with employment. As Daniel had said, we recently we relinquished our 14C certificate, so we had a lot of folks that were getting paid piecework, and many of those people had an interest in employment, and some of them maybe didn't, and we realized the reason they didn't is because of their fear of, you know, what is this going to do to my benefits? So we got to have many conversations with them about what would this look like with your benefits. And I would say the majority of them, you know, their minds were eased. They kind of had a better educated decision with moving forward with employment without the fear of kind of losing anything. And a lot of those folks really, you know, they were looking at getting a job in the community, working, you know, maybe 12, 15 hours a week. And we were like, this is barely going to affect you. You're going to make more money, but this won't even scratch the surface of your benefits. So it really kind of having those conversations with families and guardians, and even, you know, a lot of them, you know, if they live in different group homes and stuff, we would bring the group home in so they would understand how this process works for the person that's living in their house, just in case, you know, they got a call on a weekend saying, can someone come in, that they would know that the answer isn't just yes, go to work. It's like, we need to make sure that we're doing something that's going to be beneficial for the person that we're supporting. So it's, I would say, over the last probably 4 years or so, we've had a lot of success with not having benefits even really coming into question with the folks that we support. The folks that we support and their teams, I think, have a really good understanding of how this works with employment, and it's really kind of eased everybody's mind. I think our staff on the employment team feel a bit more comfortable knowing a bit more about it, that they've gone through some of the training. And then, you know, when we asked Jessica if she wanted to go, you know, through the whole process of becoming a certified, you know, benefits planning coach, and she agreed to, it became a huge asset to us, because if we do come into a situation where, like, we don't know the answer, we know we have someone that either has the answer or has a direct line to Beth, and Beth can give her the answer. It has just really made kind of life here a lot easier when it comes to employment for the folks, because we have a better grasp on kind of how the benefits and employment works.
That's such a great overview, Jim. Thank you. And I have a question for you. So when I ask people to put in the chat, like, what are your biggest concerns, hangups, fears about talking about this topic? The number one was fear about giving the wrong information, which is completely understandable. Like this, again, this is complicated. Giving the wrong information can have some pretty serious effects on a person in their life. So I'm curious how you and your team have overcome that. Like, how have you moved beyond that fear about giving the wrong information? And you had mentioned the level 1, level 2 training available on Disability Hub. I'm going to shout those out again. There are benefits trainings available on Disability Hub. The level 1 training, every person who supports people with disabilities should take that training. It is only 30 minutes. You can do it. You can do the 30-minute training and it'll give you a really good overview. The level 2 is a few hours long. It dives deeper into the different different benefits and how work affects them. So it gives a, a solid base. But like, was that, Jim, like, was that enough for you and your team to feel like, okay, we have enough information, we feel comfortable having these conversations, or what gave your team more confidence?
I think the combination of the kind of the level 1 and level 2, and then having Jessica go through the full thing. One thing that we tell kind of everybody is don't feel like you have to have the answer. Don't make up an answer. Like, if you're not sure, we're going to look into this, and looking into it could be, I'm going to check with Jessica, and if Jessica is not quite sure, she's going to check with Beth. But we really push to not feel like you have to have every single answer all the time. And I think that's made our staff comfortable just being able to say what they know versus thinking that they have to know everything. Because it can get you into some pretty hot water if you give the wrong information. And so, I think our staff is pretty comfortable knowing what they know and knowing that if they don't have the answer, we're going to help get it. But we don't have to have the answer right this second. And that's not to say, things happen. We've had some clients that have really, things like they never knew they were supposed to report their income, and they get that letter and it's like, oh, how did we get to this point? And a lot of times it's the person that said they were going to report the income isn't on the team anymore, and so that just kind of fell off the wayside and nobody knew. And I think in the past we'd be like, good luck with that. But now we have the confidence that, because we've gone through these trainings, and that Jessica has gone through kind of the benefits planning coaching, that we feel like, yeah, we're going to actually help you now, instead of just like, I hope you can get that sorted out.
Great advice. Thanks, Jim. I have a question that's been popping up in the chat that I'm going to direct at Beth first, but Lisa and Jim can certainly jump in as well. And it's kind of a hot topic, Beth, so prepare yourself. And that there's a number of case managers who are here on this training, which is fantastic. And I'm seeing some comments from, I'm assuming, case managers just talking about the amount of things that they need to know and how overwhelming that job is, that role is, and then it feeling like you have to know benefit stuff too on top of everything else that you're trying to do. It feels like, should there be someone else that I can send them to who like can keep track of this and know that? So the question here generally is, whose job is it to know this information about benefits? Who should be taking the lead on it? Should it be case manager? Should it be employment services? And just, I know you touched a little bit broadly on this at the start, but maybe just dig a little bit more into that, I think could be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. And I love that there are so many case managers here. That is great and exciting. And we did a training, just so you know, I think it's in the archive of the waiver case manager training toolkit. You can go back and watch. That was specific to case managers if you're interested. But basically, again, it's everybody's responsibility to be able to have that base level of those key messages and that positive messaging. But then if you're a waiver case manager and you're working with somebody and they're getting employment, any of the waiver employment services, those waiver employment service providers should be able to have those conversations. So we know you're not going to be the ones going through. Generally, there are some case managers who have gone into DDB 101 and will walk through, but for the most part, case managers don't have the time to be able to do that. And that's what the employment service providers are really there to do, right? Part of the waiver employment, the waiver employment services, even expiration development and support is expecting that the waiver employment service providers are able to have those conversations with the people that they're supporting. And it's a billable service, which the rest of the presentation I'll get into that. that more. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. So I hope that helps.
Thanks for clarifying, Beth. All right, I'm gonna
there was one more thing I wanted to
Yes.
say. So there was the legislation that was passed that requires all case managers to make sure everybody on a waiver knows that benefits planning is available. And that kind of made case managers go, what does that mean, right? Well, what that means is you can expect your waiver employment service providers to have this level of information available to people that you support. So it's not that you have to be doing the benefits planning, but that legislation, it did pass, and that's what that means.
Thanks, Beth. I'm going to pull up, Beth, I'm going to pull up your last few slides here to wrap that up, and then continue, everyone, that Q&A questions that you have, continue to put those in the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end. So pull those slides back up here. All right, can you see the slides, Beth?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and here it is. So the next thing is, how do we get paid for this, right? So I think a lot of providers that I have talked to anyway, through the years, didn't realize that those conversations about benefits can be paid for. It's covered under waiver employment services, and it's also covered under voc rehab. So when you're having those conversations, if you do a DB 101 estimator session, I saw a couple of you said that you weren't familiar with DB 101, you didn't know what it was, and put in R2DB 101, you can go in there and take a look, and the training also goes through what that is. That time spent talking to people about their benefits is a billable service. So you can bill waiver employment exploration, development, and support, and the VR contracts also cover them. And then that last bullet there gets to kind of what we just talked about. Waiver case managers and VR counselors are going to expect that the employment service providers know how to talk about work and benefits. So, waiver case managers and VR counselors themselves, we've talked to, making sure that as a waiver case manager or VR counselor, what those key messages are about work and benefits, and have that baseline information to be able to say, actually, you can work and have the benefits you need. And we'll get you help through the waiver employment services or through VR services to learn more as you need it as you go forward. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. Thing that comes up a lot is people say benefits planning, and it kind of freaks people out. And so I want to just make sure we're all on the same page, that there is, down at the bottom, the higher level, there is really the helping people make informed choices, very specifically knowing the benefits, doing the benefits plan, like Lisa was talking about. Jim has the person who is a benefit coach who can walk through and do a specific plan. But then there's all the way to having a conversation, right? And everything in between. So all of that is considered benefits planning. So if I come in and I have, we're talking about work, and I say the thing that comes up a lot, I'm on SSI and I can't work, being able to give some of that information, like, actually, there are work incentives and can help. And then answering some of those questions, gathering the information. So under the waiver employment service definition of covered services, the benefit fact gathering is a billable service and is part of benefits planning. And then just really digging in and being person-centered. And that's another really good point. Someone I heard say, not having to know all the details. There's a lot in DB 101. So part of what is really effective is when you have a question, go to DB 101. You don't need to necessarily go to DB 101 to dig in and start reading through everything, because you will quickly get overwhelmed. But when you have a question, somebody had a question about group residential housing or housing support, and does housing support have a work incentive? You could go to DB 101 and look and see, there's a housing section. I'm going to look at this article about about housing support and see what that says. And so that's the way that resource works best, is when you have that question, go in there to get that question answered, and then you'll know it for the next time. All right, next slide, please. All right, so here on this slide, I included links to all of the waiver implement services. So you can see that's in our community-based services manual. This is from that training that we did with waiver case managers, so that waiver case managers also know that benefits planning can be, the waiver employment services can be authorized for benefits planning. So if a person needs help understanding their benefits and has interest in going to work, and they're in that planning phase and they're not quite to working yet, they could authorize waiver employment development services specifically for the benefits conversations. All right, next slide, please. And here are the links that we have been talking about. So the disabilityhubmn.org is the place where you can go and get a lot of information. The hub is a resource that every single person you're working with should have, because it gives them access to a chat feature. They can talk to it, so it's staffed by live people. If you don't know about it, hopefully you all do know about the hub, but if not, getting this information is super important. The phone number is there, 866-333-2466. You will want to get that on speed dial as you're talking about benefits. You can also call them if you don't know the answer to something and you have a question and you're not finding it in DB 101, or you don't have time to go there or whatever. You can call the hub. The people you support can call the hub to get questions answered as well. And that is also where people were asking about the benefit lookup. How do I even know what benefits the person is getting, right? On the hub website, and it's also in DB 101, there's what's called the vault, and people can request their own benefit lookups to see exactly what benefits they're on and do things like that. So both of these resources work together. Disability Benefits 101, the website is mn.db101.org, and going in there to get information on benefits and do activities. So when you're talking about, I'm sorry, Danielle, what time are we done? And we're still good?
We're good. Yeah, we have until 2:30.
Okay, thank you. So going in there and getting that information, and they have on DB 101, there are the Triad tools where you can go in and do some little calculations of different benefits. There's also the estimators that you or the providers, if you're a case manager, your providers could do this. Or whoever the person has in their team can help them go through, or they can go through on their own and enter in their benefit information. So maybe they're getting $1,100 of SSDI, and they're on Medicare, and they're on MAEPD, and they want to know, oh, I'm working at a job right now, I'm working 20 hours, but I want to go up to 30. They can put that information in, and it'll do the calculations and show them an estimate of what their benefits would be. And that's where a lot of the fears about giving them wrong information, if you're using DB 101, that can be your source. And that was a big concern back in the day before we created DB 101. The concern was that I don't want to give wrong information. And so everyone who had questions was getting referred to the Work Incentives Connection, and they were getting full benefit summary and analysis, this big report, and waiting, and it was putting a stop to the employment conversation. And while the Work Incentives Connection did great work, they served about 6,000 people a year, which is fantastic. Problem is, we have almost 1 million people in Minnesota on benefits for people with disabilities. And so what about the rest of the 994,000 people, right? So this is a way that everybody has access to the same sort of information. Being careful about not getting wrong information is important. It's important to go and get get access to the information online, and knowing that you're doing your best, they're doing their best. And when problems come up, there are ways to deal with them as well. I just worked with a person who got cited with a $40,000 overpayment from Social Security. We worked with them and worked with the employer and worked with different, the subsidy work incentive, and that overpayment of $40,000 turned into a $17,000 underpayment, and he got money back. So there are definitely things that come up, but that's how getting the information and having these resources can really help you have that confidence. And that's why the whole goal is to increase confidence in being able to talk about those things. Next slide, please. All right, this is just screenshots of what is in the Disability Hub. We have the benefits planning toolkit. Like Danielle said before, there is a training plan in there. I put in the chat the one on the right-hand side is the agency strategies page. That's where you can find, here you are managers or supervisors, here's a training plan for you, and here's what you need to know. And then for staff, there's another training plan. So just going through, here are the key messages you need to know. And here are the links to, so level 1 training, level 2 training, and then like Jim was talking about, if you need a benefit coach. And I love that, Jim. You are doing exactly what we had hoped for. So thank you for doing that. And so the next slide, please. All right, so that's a lot of information again, but really getting to how can you start? Well, first off, those messages. Again, if nothing else, get those messages that people can work and have benefits. Positive messaging. Go in. Everybody should take level 1. Everybody, it gives you the base information and gives you some just, you'll know a little bit about what to say if people have some questions. Level 2, like Danielle said, gets into more deep information. It has information about DB 101 and how to use it. There's an orientation to DB 101. There's an orientation to My Vault. And then every benefit, the most common benefits for people with disabilities, each have a module that you can take in. Like Danielle said, it does take a few hours to get through the level 2, but you can take it as you need it. So if somebody you're working with has SSDI, you can go into that module and watch it and see, oh, what do I need to know about SSDI? So things like that are in there. It also covers healthcare. So medical assistance and Medicare is also in there. Then again, making sure that all the staff and all the people you support have disabilityhubmn.org. That link and their phone number, they can use the chat to talk about anything, ask questions. And then using that agency strategies page to go through, here's our plan. This is how we're going to incorporate it into new staff training. So onboarding, when new staff come in, we're going to have everybody go through level 1. We're going to have certain people go through level 2. I'm thinking about that. Or in staff meetings, this is what how we're going to incorporate some of these conversations in there. And that page will help you think through that. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. And here are some discussion questions for your agency. We're not going to go through them here, but just thinking about really, like, how often do questions about benefits come up? And how often are they a stop in the conversation? And how comfortable am I or my staff talking about benefits with people you support or your employment service providers if you're a case manager? And do your staff or those people know where to find answers to questions if they have them? And how can you, start finding out, making sure that providers are well equipped to answer questions. There's also a benefits planning self-assessment, kind of checking your own. We all have these biases that we don't always even realize. And one of them is, I'm afraid to talk about benefits. That is a very common thing. And so that, again, will taint the way we interact with people. And if somebody brings, I've seen it before where somebody brings up benefits, that like, oh, right, you can't work. That kind of notion gets in place sometimes. So all of this can help you think through it and figure out kind of where you need to go next. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So yeah, questions.
All right, we have a few. I'm going to stop sharing here and pull up the questions. So we have a few questions going in that Q&A box. Please continue to put them in if you have them. The first question is a little outside of the scope of this training. So I'm just gonna read it out. And I'm not gonna ask the panelists to answer it, but because again, it's not really within the scope of what we're talking about. But I know there's also a lot of people who are joining us today, case managers, employment staff, and if anyone else has resources for this person, please share those in the chat so that they can access those. So the question is, I have a person that currently is on SSI after a traumatic brain injury that occurred in 2019. His memory is not great from before this accident occurred. He is working now through supportive employment. However, completed his taxes and the team found that he owes the IRS from non-paid taxes from 2017. He is not making a lot of money to pay the amount that he owes. Are there resources for instances like this one? So I mean, one is to consider finding a job that pays more if possible, right? But barring that, if anyone has resources, feel free to share those in the chat. Beth, I see you unmuted. Is there something you wanted to share about this one?
Yeah. So Google is our friend. So there's so many benefits and so many things. So taxes aren't really, we as benefit planners, that we always say we are not tax professionals, but the IRS does have penalty relief for reasonable cause. So there are things that can be done. So I put a link in the chat.
Thank you, Beth. All right. This next one, I'm gonna start with Lisa for this one. How do we know if someone is no longer eligible for at least $1 of SSA when they are eligible but not receiving checks?
Well, for one, they won't get a paycheck. They won't get their check. But that's where using the calculation and watching how much they're making and helping them, that's really how you're going to know when they're going to be down to zero.
And I'll just add, and the benefit lookup. We have heard that the benefit lookup is the best tool, and other states are very, very jealous of us. So I put it in the chat a while ago, where in the vault, people can they can create their own vault accounts, and they can request confirmation of their own benefits from DHS, and we get that information from Social Security, so they can get a printout of, or it's a PDF of exactly what benefits they're getting, and so that will list, does this person get even $1 of SSI?
Yeah, and on the bottom, they also will give you and that's what the BBQI be like, the last 5 years of earnings, because that's usually when Social Security checks stuff. A lot of times it's the 5 years, but those forms can give you so much information. It'll tell you when it stopped, where your medical can go. There's just so much info. I don't know. I do them on everybody. I think they're very important for people to know.
Thanks, Lisa. Another not so much question as comment, but I think we can have some responses to this. Is services are unavailable if not on MA or medical assistance. So there's a fear of losing medical assistance. Health insurance is expensive. So anyone want to share a little bit about medical assistance for employed persons with disabilities or MAEPD? Beth, you look excited to talk about it. Go.
My favorite. It's my baby. I helped implement it. So yes. The good news is, and what I always say is, it's impossible in Minnesota to lose your health insurance, your healthcare coverage, if you have a disability, solely because of work. So the great thing is, MAEPD, if a person has a disability that is certified either by the state medical review team or Social Security, they have health insurance. One way or another. There are so many programs in Minnesota that will help people keep their healthcare coverage while they work. So I know that's a huge concern, and that's why we created MAEPD. So, and now MAEPD doesn't have an upper income limit, and it doesn't have an asset limit. So people can work and earn as much as they want and save as much as they want, and keep their healthcare coverage.
Thanks, Beth. I see in the chat someone had asked, is there a place where a person can check where they have been employed in the past? Anyone know that?
There is, and Lisa mentioned it. It's the BPQ, it's Benefits Planning Query from Social Security. Anybody can get one. They have to know how to get one. And so that's where it gets a little more, that's a deeper question. If you contact the hub, they can help you walk through it. But basically, hopefully everybody has heard of a My SSA account. So if you again, Google is your friend. If you Google My SSA, it will bring up how to get an account. And everybody with a social security number has access to their own information in My SSA. There is no fee for My SSA accounts. You just set one up, and it's much easier to set up now than it used to be. And then that will give you access to give the person access to request their BPQI, and it can tell them that is what Lisa was talking about. It does tell you everywhere you've ever worked. Yeah.
Beth, there is a follow-up comment about MAEPD. It says MAEPD requires SSA certification, but Social Security has income and asset limits, so a person can be dropped from SSA.
So the great news is that MAEPD, you have to either be certified through Social Security or the state medical review team. So if you don't qualify for either, Title II, SSI, SSDI, you can still get MAEPD with a state medical review team review, and they don't consider income or assets when they make that determination.
Thanks, Beth. And now a follow-up to the SSA account. Does setting up a My SSA account also allow individuals on Social Security the ability to report their income?
Income reporting. There are new ways to report income, and Lisa, you might be more up on this than I am, but I haven't kept up. So there's phone reporting. There is a wage reporting app, and people can report, directly to their worker. So yeah, it's not, the My SSA account doesn't specifically allow the wage reporting. They don't. Lisa, do they do any reporting through that? It's all through either the app or the phone, I think, right?
It's all through the app or the phone. I always tell people, I'm one that wants to make sure the stuff gets there. I have them fax it or mail it to their Social Security office. We use the phone. And we may even, if we're out and about, we may just drop the forms off. You can always remind them to get there's a number that you can get that, like if you do it over your phone, it'll give you a tracking number. So if you ever go down to Social Security and they're like, well, we didn't get your wages, and we can say, yeah, we sent them this day. Here's the tracking number of when we sent it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Jim, I'm gonna toss this one to you. What is a waiver employment service provider?
I am. It's a provider that gets paid for employment supports through the waiver. So they do everything from exploration to development to supports for employment, kind of everything that encompasses supporting a person with a disability when it comes to employment.
Great explanation. Thanks, Jim. Someone also asked, what is Career Force? Is there anyone who'd like to respond to that one?
I can, yeah. So Career Force, so there's vocational rehabilitation, which is a part of the Department of Employment and Economic Development, which is a state agency. They have Voc Rehab, which specifically serves people with disabilities in employment, finding employment. The Career Force is where any of us could go. They used to be called job centers, and you can go in and apply for jobs. You can get help finding a job. They have different programs that can help people, displaced worker programs and things like that. It's part of the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and so they also can support people with disabilities if they're not, maybe they're not eligible for Voc Rehab, maybe they don't have a waiver. They can support people as well. And I can put the link in for you if you would like a link to the Career Force Center website. It has a better explanation than I just gave, probably, of what they actually do.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. I see someone wanted to, Jim, can you remind us what agency you work with? Jim works for TSC. We can drop a link to TSC's website in here if you want to explore that's waiver provider a little bit more. And then I see a question directly directed to Jim in the chat. Jim, does TSC require the discovery phase? I know someone who is looking but not wanting to go through the whole process of discovery.
No, we don't. We're pretty big believers, and we kind of work with each person individually with where they're at. And some people definitely would benefit from the discovery phase, and other people come to us knowing kind of exactly what they want, but they just can't get it on their own. So we kind of help people kind of wherever they're at.
And that's a great explanation of like that kind of person-centered approach to employment, right? Like some people need that, some people don't. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah,
And
to force somebody through that would be miserable if they didn't need it.
Exactly, it can be kind of a long process. And I did drop a link to TSC in the chat there, so people can see that. I'm going to do another question from the Q&A here. Does the Disability Hub offer guidance and or illustrations for employment planners regarding the use of PASS, which stands for Plan for Achieving Self-Sufficiency, or IRWES, which are impairment-related work expenses? These are highly underused tools that can be helpful in supporting eligible job seekers.
Great question. And the answer is yes. The Hub will answer questions about PASS and IRWES. They are trained in them, and they understand what they are, and they can help people understand. They also will use DB 101. So the great thing is that they're going on DB 101 to get the information to share with other people. So as far as doing specific trainings and things on PASS and IRWES, we don't necessarily do that. Once in a while, they'll do a Facebook Live or something on different things. But you're right, they are highly underutilized. And more people need to know about them, which is why we want all of our providers to know about the training that we have. And in the level 2 training, it does talk a bit about the SSI and SSDI work incentives and what they are and how they work. So there's more in there.
Thanks, Beth. I saw a question, how can I look up waiver employment providers in my area? Do you want to do that one, Beth?
Yes, I will. I have 1,000 links. MinnesotaHelp.info.
I have that link up on Beth. I can drop it in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, in MinnesotaHelp.info, you can look up waiver employment service providers. The taxonomy code is in there, and it will tell you which ones are in your local area.
Great. Okay, I have a question related to what is the E1MN framework. So prepare yourselves. Okay, if a client is on a disability waiver and also working with vocational rehabilitation and in high school, are there any restrictions on using employment exploration and or development plan? I think I understand the only phase of employment services I can authorize is development find, except in certain instances.
So if a person is in school, there was a lot in there. So yeah. If a person is in school during school hours, and in general, it is the responsibility of the school to do the employment planning and services. There's also pre-ETS, pre-employment transition services that come into play. And so that is something that Voc Rehab does. And so with those, generally for people who are in school, the only time the waiver is going to be paying for anything is for support and employment outside of school hours. And there is it sounds like you might be a waiver case manager. And waiver case managers, if you go into the CBSM manual, there is a support document specifically on how to authorize services for youth in school. So I hope that answered. If it didn't, you can put more in the chat and clarify.
And there's a question, if you could please share that link, Beth, you get another link, that'd be great. Okay, there's one more question in the Q&A. This one also I think is a little outside the scope of the presentation, but we'll pose it here, and if someone has a response, that's great. There's a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings regarding the income that parents and spouses make by being a paid personal assistance provider through CDCS. CDCS stands for Community Directed Community Supports, which is the self-directed waiver. So many think that it is not income and that they do not have to report it, but that's not true. Can you talk a little bit about this? I had a father recently be told that he has to pay back SNAP due to his income through CDCS paid parent. He thought it was a grant for his daughter. I had told him it was a job and income for him.
Yeah, helping people understand what is and isn't income and what they have to report. And it gets confusing because they don't have to pay taxes on it. Sometimes people get confused by that. They may not have to pay taxes. So that's where having those conversations, is just really important. And I'm glad that you did, right? We do what we can, and how people interpret things then is up to them. And he learned a lesson. And that sometimes unfortunately is how people learn. So, I think doing your best to really explain this is income and it does have to be reported. And that's where, like I said, you did what you needed to do to let him know that, and then they get to do with that information what they will. So I bet he won't do it again. The other thing is to know, like the question about the IRS. Oh, there was a misunderstanding. To know when or if there's a possibility of making a correction. If so, the IRS, for instance, has some forgiveness that they will do for special circumstances. So if there's special circumstances, you can dig into that. And also, the person could contact the hub and ask for help with guidance with that as well.
Thank you, Beth. As we wrap up the last few minutes here, I did drop in the chat a link to a very, very short survey to fill out about this session. There is a space in the survey to provide ideas for future trainings and sessions. I read all of those and we take those into account when planning things. So if you have other ideas, please, please, please share them. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much to our phenomenal speakers today. What an amount of knowledge and wisdom that you all had to share. So thank you, Beth, Jim, and Lisa, for being here. I'm also going to share there's still like so many links in the chat today, sorry everyone. But one more link, if you want to stay in tune with future trainings from MTI, you can subscribe to the MTI newsletter. It comes out monthly. We spotlight something that's going on in the state, share a couple of resources, and also highlight any future trainings that MTI is doing, and also relevant web trainings that are going on in the state and nationally. So if you're interested in, hopefully you're here, so I'm assuming you have some level of interest in employment for people with disabilities, please sign up for that newsletter so that you can keep track of like the great opportunities that are going on out there. So that's it for today. Thanks again to the presenters, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.